Yo, what's up guys? If you couldn't tell from the title of this video is going to be about the fact that I have never seen any of the Harry Potter movies, and I'm going to be watching them for the first time and telling you my thoughts. So let's start off with the first Harry Potter movie, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Okay, so let me just start off by saying I understand why these movies are so popular because it's pretty good. First of all, it is a pretty long movie. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes and it definitely feels long, but that doesn't mean it's slow because a lot of things happen in this movie. There's a lot of big set pieces and events, and lots of things are explained and set up in this one movie. Like, the world building is very strong. It almost reminds me of John Wick in the way that they have magical versions of real world things, like they have a magic bank, magic stores. It sets up the world in a very fun way and kind of helps the audience understand it, and it doesn't talk down to the audience. Even though it is a movie that's largely meant for kids and younger people, it doesn't talk down to them, and it respects the audience enough to trust them to understand things for themselves. Picking off from that, I kind of want to talk about the tone of the film. It's a very family-friendly, lighthearted tone. Even though it does have some more serious elements, it still keeps that kind of lighthearted tone throughout the film. And the human world, and definitely the beginning of the film, kind of reminds me of Matilda and other 2090s kids movies, where it's a little weird, but it still has that kind of charm and realism to it, which makes it entertaining to watch. And that's a big thing for this film. Lots of it is kind of cheesy and campy, yet it still remains charming, especially with the use of like self-awareness, which keeps it enjoyable for all audiences. Speaking of that self-awareness, the humor of this film actually works quite well, because there's basically two types of humor. There's the PG kind of where they use the magic to create kind of slapsticks comedy, which is kind of, sometimes I'll laugh, but it's definitely there for like the younger children and stuff that would laugh at that pretty easily. But then there's also some self-aware jokes that are kind of hinting at the absurdity of the situation. These jokes are usually more cleverly written, and they're more likely to fly over the heads of younger audiences, but for older ones, they're more likely to get a laugh out of these ones. Another thing I liked about this film is that the effects, despite the film coming out in 2001, hold up pretty well. Like, many of the things they do with animals and magic tricks look pretty good, and I especially liked in the beginning where they had the cat transform into the witch. It was smart because they used the shadow to do it. So they used some kind of smart camera tricks like in older films to hide CGI, which I think is very clever. Although the CGI isn't perfect. Like, many of the scenes where the kids are flying around on broomsticks don't end up pretty well, especially when they're like flying and going around. They often look like ragdolls, and you can definitely tell. Especially if you were to pause the thing, just looking at their faces, it looks older. Now, it's excusable because the film came out in 2001, but I think it's worth to mention that the effects aren't perfect. Although I do want to say I really loved how they used the invisible cloak, because that looked really good, and it almost looked like they used a camera trick in a sort of way. I'm not exactly sure how they did it, but I really loved the way it looked. Now, the acting for this film is very strong too. The adults seem to be taking it seriously, even though it is a children's film. Many of them seem to be giving it like full effort, and you can definitely tell that. And for the kids, they're actually pretty good for child actors, especially compared to nowadays. These kids, especially considering how young they are carrying a pretty heavy load, but they're doing it pretty well. And only a few of them, you can tell that it's not the best, but overall, they're still pretty good for child actors. And just one more thing before I get into the plot of this movie, the score is really good. Like, I know it's a famous score and it's known like all around the world, similar to like Star Wars or something, but the score is very catchy, and it's also both simple and grand, which I know doesn't make any sense, but you kind of get that feeling from the score, and it's so memorable that every time you hear it, it kind of invokes a feeling of wonder that captures the idea of the film. Now, the plot of the film is fairly strong. As I said before, it's a very long film, yet lots of things do happen. It's not just pacing around waiting things to happen. The movie has many memorable and enjoyable scenes and lines, which take the movie to another level. Although, my one complaint is that I do wish the movie was a little bit quicker. Like, it takes them 30 minutes to actually get to Hogwarts, and that's even before the main storyline of the movie starts happening. Although that main storyline is actually quite entertaining and interesting, it's cool to see these three new characters both adapt to their new school and uncover a conspiracy and try and solve it, as well as kind of develop as characters. The twist at the end of the movie actually shocked me. I was pretty sure Snape was the bad guy, so I was surprised that it was this other guy, and it's kind of interesting how it changes how you see the movie, and it's definitely something where if you were to rewatch it, it would make a lot more sense. And one thing this movie does really well is set up things. Similar to Star Wars or the first Lord of the Rings movie, it sets up elements and characters throughout this huge world that it just created that you can see go on for lots of movies. And especially with the fact that it's taking place at a school and it features like a young cast of kids, you could see how this could be turned into a franchise where each movie shows the kids growing up, but also delving into this plot with Voldemort and other magical problems. The only thing I'm concerned about is that it could often feel repetitive. Like even within this movie, especially when they're at their school, some of the antics they get to kind of feel similar to what they did before earlier in the movie. And especially if this is a series of 8 movies, I'm worried that these movies will feel repetitive and just feel like they're the same thing one after another. Now I'll have to find out when I watch the next movie, Harry Potter 2, coming up in a video probably pretty soon, maybe in a week or so. But anyway, I like this movie, I enjoyed it, I understand why it was so popular. I thought it's pretty long for a kid's film, but it had a special charm to it, which I understand why it made it such a good and popular worldwide craze. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Actually, just one side note, when I was watching this movie, it kind of occurred to me how similar it was to Star Wars. Like, just stay with me here. But isn't it the exact same plot? Like this kid, Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter, his parents died, or I guess in Luke Skywalker's case, became evil, but they still kind of died, was sent to live with his aunt and uncle in the middle of nowhere, away from this magical world that his parents were involved in, Jedi or wizard. And then later, when he gets into an older age, he's recruited back into this world by someone that knew his parents, like Dumbledore or Obi-Wan, in order to fight this great evil that was the reason his parents died, Palpatine or Voldemort. And in both franchises, the main villain, Palpatine or Voldemort, isn't actually seen until the later movies, and the hero has to evolve and work in order to be able to face him. And Harry Potter has a wand, Luke Skywalker has a lightsaber, both a stick-wielded weapon which they use to defeat the bad guy. Not to mention that both main leads have a male sidekick and a female sidekick. Luke has Han and Leia, and Harry Potter has Ron and Hermione. Pretty similar, right? And that's not mentioning the fact that the Force and Harry Potter magic are similar ideas, and in both of those, the main lead, Harry Potter and Luke Skywalker, have a unique ability to use it better than the rest of the population. Okay, sorry for that side tangent, but still, they are pretty similar things, and if in later movies, the similarities continue to grow, then I'll come back to it. Although, if in later movies they start to differentiate more, I'll probably forget about this. But anyway, thank you for watching, see you soon, see ya.